Hey y'all, it's time to talk about season 8 of Degrassi. Now, this season marks the first year where the entire OG cast is not in the high school anymore. And so there are quite a few changes. Like, there is a new principal, Mr. Shepard, who also started and is coaching the football team. And there's also quite a few new students. And there's also quite a few guest star appearances from old cast members like Jimmy and Toby and even Craig. Now it's time to talk about the new kids at Degrassi during season 8. And we're starting off with Claire and Allie. Claire is Darcy's younger sister, and Allie is Sav's younger sister, and they both become friends, and they're kind of complete opposites. Claire can be very conservative at times. She wears a uniform to school even though she doesn't have to, and she at first isn't very much interested in boys or dating. She just wants to concentrate on her studies. And then there's Allie, who is just not really conservative at all. She has a whole entire wardrobe dedicated for school that her parents know nothing about, that she just like hides in the back of her closet. And she is very much boy crazy and has her sights set on Johnny. Now, these two really do work as friends because as the season progresses, they kind of start to rub off on each other. Allie teaches Claire to come out of her shell a little bit more, and by the end of the season, she's no longer wearing uniform. She's kind of figuring out what her style is and embracing it. And Claire helps Allie learn that she doesn't always have to go at maximum speed when it comes to boys, that she can take things at her own pace and do things when she's ready to do them. Now it's time to talk about Casey and Connor in season 8 of Degrassi. Connor is the godson of Mr. Simpson, and he is living with him and going to Degrassi. Now, Connor had some bumps in the beginning of the season because he's in the gifted program with all of the kids, and Claire is really his only friend. And then he has an incident with Allie that basically gets him expelled from school. And then he finds out that he is autistic, and this kind of helps him learn more about himself and why his actions are the way that they are. And he does get his expulsion revoked, and things do start looking better for him at the end of the season. Now, KC would be categorized as a troubled kid. He had some issues prior to being at Degrassi, and now he is living in a group home instead of being in juvie. And he is doing much better at Degrassi, but he did try and hide his life from his friends, and that did not work out well for him. Now, both Casey and Connor had crushes on Claire, and they kind of duked it out to like win her affection or whatever. But Claire really just had feelings for Casey, and once they got past all of the drama of that, they were able to succumb to their feelings for each other, and looks like they're dating now. All right, now it's time to talk about Principal Shepard in season 8 of Degrassi, also known as the Shep. Now, he is just not a good principal at all. You know, at first it just seemed like he was focusing more on the fun things, like they had a pep rally for the first day of school instead of classes, and he just hands Holly J the student class presidency. But over the course of the season, we see that he is actually terrible at his job. And I'm not talking about terrible like Ava from Abbott Elementary. I'm talking about he is just a bad dude. Like I said before, he is the coach of the football team, and Jane tries out as the only girl. And of course, the guys are bullying her and ridiculing her. And at one point, they even jump her. And Principal Shepard doesn't seem to care. He kind of just puts the blame on her and doesn't do anything to the guys. And then he has that situation with Claire, and it ends up being recorded, and they play it for the whole school while he's supposed to be accepting this best principal type award. And unfortunately, he doesn't get fired. He gets sent to sensitivity training and is back very shortly after. And so at the end of the season, with him being back, we see that he really hasn't changed much. He's just saying the like cookie cutter statements, and you can tell that he really doesn't believe what he's saying when he's in these situations where he would act inappropriately. It's just an all out frustrating situation. It's time to talk about Riley in season 8 of Degrassi. Now, Riley is also one of the new kids, and he's on the football team, and he starts to hang out with Peter, of all people. And we do see them build a friendship. And then Riley kisses Peter. And of course, they both freak out over this. But Peter decides that he wants to just be a good friend and be there for Riley while he goes through whatever it is that he's going through. Now, Riley does have a hard time dealing with his sexuality. Like, he gets very angry with Peter and he tries to deny the kiss, and it fractures their relationship a little bit, but Peter continues to be there for him, and so their relationship does get better. Riley also was taking these like knockoff steroids, which of course messed him up physically. But Peter was also there for him, try to get him to get off of it, and he does eventually. It's time to talk about Holly J in season 8 of Degrassi. In the beginning of the season, Holly J is, the top of the food chain, captain of the power squad, student council president. She's got the money, her parents can pay for stuff, and she can do whatever. But then her family falls into some money trouble, and she has to cut up her credit card and get a job. And of course, at first, she tries to hide it, which means that she's going to be super mean and super rude to a bunch of people. And that leads to her getting kicked off the power squad, and the guy that she was into is no longer into her anymore. And at this point, she's kind of like outcasted, just working at the dot, trying to mind her own business, but not really. And then the dot gets robbed, and it's just her and Spinner there. And she somehow convinces the guy to surrender. And everyone applauds her for it. And the rest of the season doesn't focus a lot on her, but with what we do see, we can tell that she is slowly but surely changing her behavior. Okay, guys, now it's time to talk about Sav and Anya in season 8 of Degrassi. So, Sav and Anya are still dating, but because Anya is not Muslim, Sav is doing everything he can to avoid introducing her to his parents. And of course, that upsets her and she breaks up with him, but eventually they do get back together. And Sab does finally invite Anya over to his home to meet his parents and have dinner with them. But his parents straight up say that Sab can only be with someone who is Indian and that their relationship has no future. But Sab decides to stand up to his parents and continue to date Anya. At the end of the season, Sav has his own moment where he has to decide which path to take, engineering or music. And at first, he really just thinks that he can't follow music at all, that he has to go on this engineering track already in high school and be practical. But then he learns that there are more jobs that he can get in the field of music than just being a musician in a band. And he tries to convince his father to let him focus more on music for the upcoming semester and then you know, do engineering later in his high school years. And his dad agrees. And we do get a chance to see how passionate Sav really is with music. I mean, we see him play multiple instruments and he even has a good musical ear. So none of this is just like after school hobby for him. Now it's time to talk about Mia in season 8 of Degrassi. Now in this season, Mia's mom decides that she's going to help out with Isabella more so Mia can have more of a teenage high school experience. And this means that she is back on the power squad without any distractions. And that leads her to get scouted by a modeling agency and she becomes a model. Now, as someone who is very new to the whole modeling world, she kind of just does what she thinks she's supposed to do. And that includes her hooking up with this athlete who she was going to be working with in hopes that he was going to give her the job, and also partying with him, just wild situation. But she realizes that she should not have done any of that she didn't need to do any of that, and she kind of just takes a step back from all that. She's also dating Peter at this time, and they have their ups and downs because Peter is still in contact with Darcy and still thinking about her, and Mia is not okay with that, and so they break up, but then they do eventually get back together. Mia also almost completely drops out of school because she is failing a class and thinks that because she's doing so well with modeling that she doesn't need school anymore, and she can take care of Isabella and her mom better by just being a full-time model. But then she realizes that school is in fact necessary and that she should have an education. So she decides that she's only going to model when she is on breaks from school. And this was very reminiscent of the time when Manny was trying to decide whether she was going to go to college or if she was going to be on this television show. So I'm glad that she decided to stay in school. She needs at least a high school diploma. All right, now it's time to talk about Jane in season 8 of Degrassi. I'll just say they put Jane through it in this season of Degrassi. First off, she has all those struggles with being a girl on the football team and no one really doing anything to protect her. And then when her dad comes to visit to try and help out her brother, we see her remember and relive the trauma that she went through because of him when she was a kid. And it is so heartbreaking to watch. I mean, she obviously does not like her father, but because she repressed these memories, she doesn't even know why. And the more he's around, the more she starts to remember, and she doesn't really know what to do because neither her mom or her brother knew that any of this was going on. And it's just a terrifying thing to have to relive and then to think about maybe telling her mom and her brother, especially when her brother is just so fond of their dad and is really enjoying the time that he's spending with him. But Jane does eventually tell her brother what happened, and he does stand up for her and basically just start to write his dad off. And then she tells her mom, and they all start going to family therapy. And I really appreciate how they didn't make Jane have to fight to try to convince her brother and her mom that this happened to her. They believed her immediately. So kudos to Degrassi for that. Okay, now let's talk about Spinner in season 8 of Degrassi. Spinner is still dating Jane, and he is around because he now works at the dot where pretty much everyone hangs out. And he has a bit of a tough time because he applies to police college, as they call it, but he doesn't get accepted. And then he lies to Jane about this, and of course, this upsets her, and they have a rift in their relationship. And for some reason, he thought it was a good idea to propose to Jane while she's at this event where she was giving a speech talking about being a woman in a male dominated sport. And of course, they do not stay engaged. And I think Spinner was just succumbing to the pressure of seeing all his friends go off to school and he's still in their hometown. And then, Jimmy comes and he says he's going to propose to his girlfriend. And so Spinner just thinks that he should do that too. Just not the best decision to make, but he's still dating Jane and they seem to be going strong. And like I said in my video talking to Holly J, someone comes in and robs the dot and they end up shooting Spinner by accident. This show doesn't really like to seem to give Spinner a break because, first he has cancer, then he gets shot. But, all we can do is hope for the best. All right, now let's talk about Emma in season 8 of Degrassi. Like I said in my previous video, Emma is at Smithdale with Manny and Liberty. And it's really not going well for her there. First, she finds out that she's not rooming with Manny and attempts to try and fix it and gets a quad with Manny, Liberty, and someone named Kelly, who they find out is actually a dude. Also, we see that Emma is just not making friends. She kind of just sits in the room. She's not participating in a lot of things. And she's just, I guess, relying on Manny and Liberty to be the ones that she hangs out with all the time. But they're off making their own friends. Now, Emma decides that a good way to make friends is to participate in some Puff Puff Pass activities with a couple girls in her dorm. And thus, she gets the nickname Blaze. And she takes on her new role of Blaze and makes special brownies that she passes out at the dorm Olympic, only for one of her friends to get sick and have to be rushed to the hospital. And then, of course, they do a sweep, and she lets Kelly know that he needs to get rid of the stash, and this leads to him getting caught and him getting kicked out of the dorm. And of course, Liberty and Manny are also highly upset about her doing this because she put them in jeopardy of losing their housing as well if they all got caught. Just an all around not so great semester for Emma. All right, now it's time to talk about Liberty in season 8 of Degrassi. Now, in the previous season, Liberty says that she's going to Banting for college, but we soon find out in season 8 that she decided to go to Smithdale, which is where Emma and Manny are also attending. And most of Liberty's focus this season had to do with her rushing for a sorority. We know that she is kind of like a legacy and was going to rush for the sorority that her family has been in, but she gets approached by another sorority that's full of all white women. And it's no shock that we learn that they only want her in the sorority because she's black and they want her to be their token diversity person. And it's really frustrating to watch. I mean, not surprised that this whole thing happened, but to have to watch Liberty go through all of this and then do things that we know she's not comfortable doing, but the fact that she's trying to impress these people, she's going to do it anyway, just for all of it to culminate in her finding out that they just want her to be their token. But Liberty does the right thing in not accepting their offer for her to join the sorority. So good for her. All right, now it's time to talk about that finale special for season 8 of Degrassi. This four-part finale is what I like to call Degrassi Takes Hollywood because Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes are back as Jason is auditioning for his first film that he has written and directed. And there's huge, heavy focus on our graduates in this finale because Paige is already out in LA trying to become a stylist, but instead she is the assistant to this reality star. And at first, she auditions for the role and she gets it, but she is a complete diva and just ruins any chance for her to continue in the role. And then there's Manny, who is the one that Jason really wanted in the role. But Manny is with her toxic and controlling professor who just puts her down any chance he gets. He's just this super pretentious guy that is jealous of Manny's talent and he basically emotionally abuses her. But with the help of Emma and Jay, Manny does head out to LA to audition for this role. And she goes through a lot of bumps and bruises, but she does eventually get there and gets cast in the role. And meanwhile, there's also this whole Ellie and Craig moment, which is just like, girl, why can't you separate yourself from this dude? Because, again, he plays with her emotions, but for some reason she's still shocked that he's doing this, even though this is a pattern of behavior for him. But they don't end up together in the end, thankfully. Now, this finale really just took me back because I do remember watching this when it aired. There was just so many iconic things. Like the guest stars, Vivica A. Fox was just randomly in a scene, and Pete Wentz was in the episode 2 with Craig. Also, Manny and Jay get back together. And then we have that epic scene where Manny and Peter and Sav and their band are all on top of the school bus, and Manny is singing the Life is a Show song. It was just such an iconic finale, and I could not talk about this season without talking about this specifically. All right, that's all I have for you with season 8 with Degrassi. Make sure you let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on all the videos of all the people that I talked about. And stay tuned because, of course, next is season 9.